Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video, I'll be reviewing the DM's Guild supplement Fleshforge, Dwiergus number 2 by Remley, Farr for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links for your DM's Guild shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to my platinum patrons, Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, Andy, and Chris, and gold patrons, RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, Yuma, Marcos, Dave, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, AK, Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Ross, Lumpy Spuds, and Jerome. Thank you all very much for your support. So, Dwiergus number 1 was PD's Pork Pie Emporium, which was a really, really cool, inventive adventure with a very unique art style, a really interesting, darkly humorous, kind of messed up dungeon crawl through like the bowels of this corporate hell structure that had to do with processing like meat and milk, and had a bunch of demon pigs, and it was just a really, really shockingly good, amazing adventure for how messed up the premise was. Very like almost, I don't know, Tim Burton-esque, when like Tim Burton was good and not doing a bunch of remakes left and right. So really, really good. I reviewed it on the channel, I think in November 2019. And that was called Dwiergus number 1. So Dwiergus number 2, I thought was going to be a sequel, like a follow-up adventure to that. And I was really excited because I was like, oh, I want to see what this designer is going to do next, and how to keep continuing along this story about this just messed up, fleshy demon god with this whole host of like demon pig creatures and all this very, very fun kind of darkly satirical dressing down of like capitalism and corporate hell structure and all that. And it was really good. Unfortunately, I'm immediately struck with disappointment because Dwiergus number 2 is not an adventure, which is very, very odd, and I think a bit of a misstep when it comes to marketing and releasing this product. Because if you're going to release something as number 1 and it's an adventure, and then you release something as series number 2 and it's not an adventure, that's really weird. Fleshforge is a collection of monsters. It's a mini monster manual, basically, using some of the monsters that are in PD's Pork Pie Emporium, and that's maybe about a third of them, and some that are completely new but would probably fit within that same weird, messed up universe. It's very, very good. It has a lot of the traits that I really liked from Dwiergus number 1, in that it is extremely well written and evocative. Like the descriptions on a lot of these things are like poetry. Like, it's a really, really great read. You know, some things are very useful to have, for the mechanics of the product, and that's probably why ultimately we are purchasing products on things like the DM's Guild, because we want to use those things in our games or use those story beats. Fleshforge is just a great read. Like, it's just to read the descriptions of these monsters is absolutely incredible, even though that might not translate to your players fully, but just to have it as honestly a read is fantastic. It keeps that really great art style that the designer uses. So we get this captivating original art for all these new monsters, which is really cool to see. So I was disappointed initially that it's not an adventure at all, but it is a kind of mini monster supplement, which has a really good theme that I like, which is basically the from the same universe that this designer has created, about this fleshy demon creature that named Dwiergus. So it's not terribly big. The whole thing is only about 30 pages long, and it has some of those same hog creatures, which again are basically copy and pasted from that first Dwiergus number 1. But most of them are quite new and really pretty messed up, as you can see by the art style. It's all what was that? It's the they made a movie of this recently. God, I can't think of it now. But it was a book that was always in our libraries it was like short horror stories, and they were done by this certain artist who had like the really messed up art style that was horrifying as much as the actual written stories were. That's what this reminds me of. Like it's really really evocative. It's chilling. It's horrifying in all the best ways. There are creatures that can essentially give birth to demons, little demon fetus creatures called these childkin. In fact, I'm just going to read you the description because this is this is what I mean by absolutely amazing descriptive text. So this is the childkin, which are these fetus boil tumor things that can grow out of these faithful followers of Dwiergus chanting his name. Condensing like abscessic boils from spring shoot chimney coal stacks, coagulating in dewdrop mornings on blood-sun horizons, fetal pods of concentrated aether tenari bursting out in bulbic celebration, new life at best, though scraped and garbaged refuse most often. These are the childkin, embryonic demons sprouting from Fleshforge factories. It's fantastic. Like, it's absolutely amazing. There are all these crazy ass creatures in here. The best one, I really like the cuckoo. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Adolphophage, but it's like right out of a Stephen King or like a Twilight Zone episode. Like this little demon child that can eat every member of its family, and then it literally eats the memory of that victim as well. And the description here, as you can see, it takes a full fucking page, is this horrifying short story about this family and this child who's got all these siblings, and all of a sudden he's got fewer siblings, and then he's got just the mom and dad, and then the mom is gone, and then it's just this child just it's so good. It's so fun to read. And the whole time I'm thinking, how on earth do we actually incorporate some of these messed up, very story-heavy creatures that don't necessarily have all these, like, amazingly powerful abilities? They're just extremely thematic. So I skipped one that was the Apathicabus, which is this creature that just is almost like a Seven Deadly Sins sloth-type creature, and its whole ability is just to generate exhaustion around it. These are not the sexiest creatures in terms of prowess or abilities or anything, but they're extremely thematic. And they're interesting, which is a really impressive, frankly, hard feat to do now between all the different monsters and creatures we have available in, between the Monster Manual and Volos and Mordenkainen's, and then all of the various supplements released on the DM's Guild. How do you still create interesting creatures? This is honestly a great way to do it. They're just very, very crazy and cool and fascinating. About halfway through, we get a huge amount of tables to essentially just modify and change demons, which is a great add, and this is probably honestly the most useful part of the entire thing. These are very, very specific situational creatures that you could probably craft an entire subplot or side quest around, which I'll get to that in a minute, because this product does address how to use them. But if you want to just use any kind of demon, which it has a bunch of base demons here, there's a little D100 table. There's a D20 table for origins of, how you ended up with that demon, how that demon was created, because demons are basically pretty gross. A demon's motivation, a D12 table, and a D100 table for mutations, as demons can have things wrong with them. And I think that in a lot of cases with D&D uses the classic fantasy setup for demons and devils, which is the classic horned, wielding weapons, still generally has all of its, a demon is still humanoid, but it just has, maybe like a cow face or a pig face, or might have hooves, and is wielding, whips or things, or might be like a gargoyle looking creature, could be like a demon. But with this designer, really takes demons in a way more eldritch format. So they're really hideous. They're really fucking scary and frightening and weird looking. And these mutations are part like inside out organs, or has, urine that melts through metal, or has another head instead of a stomach, has mouths where its eyes would be. Just, you can basically take any base demon and just fucking mess it up as much as you want, which is part of what being within this Dwiergus, this Fleshforge realm is that, like, this cancerous life has just gone unchecked, and it's really cool. It's interesting. Most of them don't actually have any mechanical benefit. It's just purely for descriptive purposes, which I think is what this designer honestly does best when it comes to all these different monsters and ideas. So that's something you can actually take and apply to like if you're doing a Descent into Avernus campaign, you just wanted to have this area of really messed up looking demons. This is a really cool table to have. I also want to point out the Flake, which is a incredibly good joke. So if you notice, some of these monsters do not actually have stat blocks. The Flake is literally a creature that plucks player characters when their players are absent. And I really want to read this entire thing. I don't think I'm going to, but it just mentions the Flake is a far realm entity that gains power every time a player in a tabletop RPG misses a game session. Like a bloated remora fish, this mind-bending foe reaches through reality, secretes tranquil theta waves, and then kidnaps any PCs whose players aren't present. So it's a really funny excuse to grab, what happened? Why is that? If so-and-so is not here, then their player character is not here. This is a DM roundtable I'm still wanting to have, which is how do you handle absent players at the table? That's always a tricky thing. Everybody's got their own concept. This is just a really funny joke. And again, it's just a fun read. If you're just reading this, even though you're not going to use this thing, I think it's just hysterical to sit here and read this comment. The Flake is a source of spite for your missing players. Are you tired of role-playing a reason for a PC's sudden absence? Is Tito having to play both his bard and Cindy's fighter tonight just because Cindy messaged the group chat 5 minutes before 8 o'clock about that blog assignment she had to finish before midnight? Just, again, the whole section of this is really funny, and I absolutely adore it. So thumbs up for that one. There's a whole section on the Hogkin, which if you've already read Dwiergus #1, this is the least useful section, and you really should, because that's the adventure that spawns this whole like universe and idea. It's a really fantastic adventure on the DM's Guild, and it basically just copy and pastes all the Hogkin stuff from there, which I expected this to be. So it's nice that we got all the extra bits. Tractor Man City, another one that doesn't actually have a stat block associated with it. Just a really hilarious idea. To actually create it, you were supposed to print out a bunch of town or dungeons, tear the maps up, tape them together, and now you've got a Tractor Man City, which is just supposed to be all of these weird things plopped together. You could have, what is the description here? Like a hermit crab decorating its shell, the Tractor Man picks up what catches his eye and gleefully adds it to its collection. Citizens must make do with their new lifestyle. You could have a high-class elven grove get squished into the middle of a merfolk pond. There's no stat block here. It's like a story idea, basically. There's this huge mile-long sentient creature that's got these wheels and smoke billowing out and just all these different messed up, cityscapes on top of it. Again, I'm just picturing like this Tim Burton like hellscape or I don't know, episode of Broken Mirror or something, or Twilight Zone, that this thing would be haunting around, and somehow that's an entire adventure. You can make a campaign out of that. This creature comes ambling by and you have to, or maybe you find yourself stuck on it, or it consumes you, and now you're in these tunnels and this living creature. Give me a whole fucking product based on this, because this is a fantastic story seed idea. That's not the kind of thing I would normally expect to find in what is ostensibly a Monster Manual style supplement. This is really a whole idea for a campaign, and obviously this artwork is just it's sublime. It's absolutely incredible. I can't have enough good things about it. And then my biggest issue the whole time is, well, how the hell are we supposed to actually use these monsters? Because they're so very specific. They're very situational. A lot of them are demons that would appear. Like there's this child snatching nurse. There's those tumors that grow out of people. Like when do you use that? And the product like answered my question in the last section, which is a monster idea table. This probably would have been better served and organized had it been included with each monster's section rather than this part at the end, which divides it up by monster. I think I would have rather had every single monster just had their own D4 table of like, hey, here's some adventure hook ideas of how to use these particular monsters at within each of their own sections. So that's a little bit of a nitpick there, but otherwise, I think this is a really fun idea that basically gives you ideas of how to use all these various monsters and creatures, and I think it works pretty well. So I enjoy having it there. The cuckoo, again, I can't say that name, but that little child that devours its family members and even their memories is extremely messed up for the adventure hooks. One of the PC's family members is actually a cuckoo adelphage that the PC is convinced has lived with the family its whole life. Or another one is that PC has had children with a significant other, but the cuckoo ate the children, so the PC no longer remembers them. The PC discovers this terrible truth later through old letters, family friends, or divining spell. Extremely dark, extremely twisted. That is what you're going to get out of these kind of monsters, and I think honestly it's a delightful read, even though I was disappointed that it's not the adventure sequel I was hoping for, but yet it does have a lot of the themes and ideas and concepts that I did want out of this designer for another Dwiergus piece. So let's go over my pros and cons for Fleshforge. Pros: evocative descriptions and captivating art for each of the unique monsters. That is what I've come to expect from this designer, and I was not disappointed with that. Pro: random tables of demonic mutations. I liked that kind of middle section very much so, as well as origins, motivations. All that is just a good way of bringing your demons to life. Pro: every monster features a D4 adventure hook table. You'll find that at the end of the product, but I think that was a really great way to bring home. And frankly, I would love if all unique monster products that added, new stat blocks and new creatures also included ways to actually incorporate those monsters and ideas for DMs looking at it going, okay, yeah, let's see how I can actually incorporate this into my games. And Pro: Tractor Man City. Like, that's just, what a fucking cool idea. My only con is that it's not an adventure sequel to Dwiergus #1. I was really hoping for that, and I do feel like it's a bit of a... I think it's incorrectly marketed and serialized, because when I think of Dwiergus #2, given that the first one was an adventure, I'm going to assume this was a follow-up sequel to that. Instead, it is a monster manual spin-off of Dwiergus #1. So I'm not disappointed in what I ended up getting, but I do still have a hankering for a full-on adventure, especially given how cool and interesting some of these creatures are. Just show me the adventure that uses them. Final verdict: the Fleshforge is a unique collection of memorable demons from the delightfully twisted mind of PD's Pork Pie Emporium. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson, and you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel.